when it comes to financial services and social networks, I mean, I'm always kind of shocked at how far behind they are other big industries like, say, the phone companies or British Airways, or, you know, on Twitter you've got O2 and British Airways who are both very responsive to customer complaints. And then a couple of weeks ago we saw NatWest, its entire IT system out, and the @NatWest user account is run by a woman called Natalie Westerman, who is a 20-year-old teacher in Newcastle. So it just kind of says a lot about the fact that, you know, NatWest cares so little, or did care so little about Twitter and their customers online, that they didn't even have the username. I'm sure that will change now, but they've got a long way to go. Essentially, is compared to other big industries, is the impression that I get, and I think the impression that a lot of customers have got in the last couple of weeks.
Based on personal experience and not based on empirical data, is that everything is blocked apart from LinkedIn, because LinkedIn tends to have be seen in professional context, and they have very strong relationships with all the banks because they have an e-recruiter tool. So generally it tends to be blocked, apart from special exemption, like you mentioned. I think you might have read recently in the press about Morgan Stanley that made a special exemption for 600, ran a pilot for 600 brokers to use Twitter for marketing purposes in a very...
Send out pre-approved tweets. Like
yeah, absolutely. So very good point. With very much can. So they are using it as a purely broadcast-only platform, so they're not necessarily allowing their financial advisors, which are now 18,000 using it, to engage in any conversation with their customers, which is why enterprise social networking is so important, because you can control that conversation in a compliant environment, i.e. supervision, monitoring, etc., and you can be compliant with all the different regulatory bodies. So generally, in terms of social media usage, most financial services organizations and professional services organizations block Twitter, Facebook, etc.
Actually, there are still people who are praising some banks. 7% of customers are still praising brands, which is very interesting. That was for me the most interesting data that I learned from this study. But basically what we can see here is that 32% are complaining about products or services, which is, I guess, understandable. 5% asking for help and advice. And it shows how problems of two banks only, Barclays and NatWest, toxicated the customer satisfaction of the whole industry. Basically, as we can see here, this is a so-called market emotion barometer, where we measure the customer satisfaction rates of the particular brands based on the sentiment analysis of discussions where customers are mentioning the companies. Basically, the customer satisfaction index dropped significantly in June for most of the banks, which gave a large opportunity for the underdogs, like, for example, Halifax, that is now the most praised brand, on internet in the UK in the selected industry. The study also shows an interesting story about how customers turned immediately to social media when they realized that something is wrong with their online banking. And it also shown how NatWest was too slow to respond to these customers. So the snowball of the complaints and questions kept rolling. One experience back from the Central Europe where 1 month ago, there was a bank who made a big mistake, and they sent to their customers 2% less of interest rates for the last month than they were supposed to do. And thousands of customers started to tweet about it, started to be angry on the social media, etc. What they did, basically, despite the fact that it was a public holiday, it was a bank holiday, they were able to get 10 people behind the computers. And what they did the whole day was just, hey, Paul, sorry, we screwed up. We'll make it better. And in 2 days, you'll have your money in your bank account. Morning where this happened, the sentiment of the discussions was extremely bad, and was the most hated brand in the Czech Republic. On evening, there were tens of people who already praised the client, who already praised the brand, because they didn't even expect that somebody will get to them and they will say, "Hey, sorry, it's our mistake. We will improve it." So my approach is every little helps with this, and the banks should start to do something and then analyze what's the impact.
I think one of the different ways of looking at it is we've talked about whether or not brands are allowed to use Twitter. We've talked about how to cope with the vast volume of discussions that are happening online. Often what brands tend to do, the innovation that we see coming from other industries, is focusing on influential individuals. You know, if you speak to the people who complain a lot, not just because you're picking on them, but because if somebody actually understands everything about what you do, they might actually be better primed to say the right thing online. My background is public relations, talking to a relatively small number of people, like Chris, who know how to write a story and whose job it is to write a story. When you take that approach to social media, you look at the people who perhaps flag really high on Azeem's lists on PeerIndex. Who are the top influencers? Who are the people that will break your brand if they complain, or that will make you famous if they love you? And you can actually court those people in normal ways, very kind of above board ways. You know, just make sure that they know about your products. Don't bribe them. Make sure if you've got a new car, they get a chance to go and test drive it, stuff like that. And that goes such a long way. They will then become your brand ambassadors, and they will then be the ones who might want to talk to the rest of the hundreds of millions of customers around the world for you.
So, you know, you're getting 35,000 or 30,000 or 20,000 tweets a day. Which are the ones that need to be addressed most accurately? And I have a utility story. So I'm a customer of a cable broadband company here, and I had a bad experience with them over about 18 months, during which time I ran 18 months worth of tests and recorded ping traffic, trace routes, and so on, and then started to tweet that I was having a bad experience and I couldn't get anyone to help me. The company could have simply come to PeerIndex and spotted that I'm an influencer in broadband in the UK. They didn't, and in the end, the Telegraph ran a story on UK CEO says Virgin Media has the worst possible broadband and here's 2 years worth of data to prove it. The next day I get a call from the CEO's office, and that afternoon we have an engineer coming in and they identify that it's actually an edge router about 600 yards from my house that's causing problems. All of that could have been resolved by being able to say, this is somebody who's got social influence in this topic, they're likely to create action in other people, they're likely to cause referrals, positive or negative. You can't know that a priori unless you have that data from companies who are providing it.
One maybe last question to everybody, predictions for the future social media and business.
So 100% of banks don't use social media. I'd say 100% of them will let you if you ask. I've never come across a company whose comms or customer services department haven't asked to let them use Twitter and Facebook. So I'd say that stat is already opposite, but within 2 years, everybody in every function of the business will be doing the kind of things that we were shown on one of the slides earlier, getting an extra day a week of work time, learning a little bit more about their customers. So it'll go beyond where it already sits now as 100% yes, which is comms and customer service, and it'll start to work its way through the entirety of the business. That's where I think it'll go.
Yeah, but can I just comment on it? The problem is that's not good enough, because things are moving faster and faster and faster. This is what I was going to this morning with the transition from an industrial to an information economy. You don't have the right response in an industrial economy is learn, prototype, implement, work on 5-year cycles, get it right. You have time. It's worth the wait to get it right. In the 21st century, it doesn't work like that. But in 2 years' time, when everybody's on Twitter, there'll be something new that nobody's on. And these organizations are going to become structurally behind the times. Yeah. And the worst thing is, forget about their customers. Their customers, if they have a product that they need, they might do it. It's the people that work there are going to become more and more disillusioned and deeply unsatisfied with their work, because it's not Barclays that ends up looking stupid, and nobody yells at Barclays. They yell at some poor person trying to do a good job in a branch that has no control over this, or somebody on the end of the customer service line. And their institutions aren't giving them the tools or the culture. The tools are only a manifestation of the culture of how work gets done in the 21st century.
That's absolutely right. In your mind, what are the tools? The tools that the organization needs. Are you talking culturally or are you talking technologically?
I think it's a combination. I mean, technology is changing our culture. And I asked the question this morning, who has better IT at home than they do at the office? And most people answer yes. I mean, that's just stupid. I mean, it should be at least be the same.
No, I absolutely agree. And that's obviously touching on a big trend, which is the consumerization of IT, that people have all these tools at home, search, Google search works.
I mean, what's more ridiculous is when they whip out their iPhone to get their job done, not to do something stereotypical, to get their job done.
Yeah, that's absolutely what we're looking at doing, is bringing the tools that you have in your home that are engaging and powerful into the enterprise, because there's a huge lag. Google is not the number one in enterprise search. Autonomy / Zoom or one of the other ones is. So people have all these powerful tools, including social media, at home in their personal lives and in their office. They'll go onto LinkedIn to actually find out someone that works in their department in another country. So they can't access their corporate directory. The data is not as rich. So it's basically social is hugely disruptive technology that is impacting businesses, both in the way that those businesses engage with them on these social media sites, and also in the way that it's sweeping across industries. I know from our company, we rolled out a platform globally at the investment bank. There was, in a structured hierarchical organizations, disruptive technology like this that's flattening for the organization is very scary to a lot of people. And they are very worried about trying to maintain that structure in the chain of command. But it's happening, I guess, is the key message.
Perfect. Thank you. So, thank you very much.